Okay, this is the third part of our video, the interchangeable mount system. This is going to cover the trolling motor mount. Now it's pretty much the same as my last video I did. Excuse me. And so I'm going to go ahead and get started on that now. So you'll notice that the big thing is, like I said in the other video, you've got these two pockets, and I marked them in black so that they show up on the camera. Those have to be faced in a certain direction in order to work. Then you've got one that's plain with no pockets in it, and that one, if you notice these holes right here, these are slotted. So the one with the pockets is going to go underneath on these slotted holes facing the two holes here, which are for our little adjustment blocks. So I'm going to start by putting the solid rail in first, and I'll do that now. It's easier just to slide this one under there so they're the right height, and then you can just kind of move that back and forth. But we want to put a washer under each one of these. And then we're going to use these 7/8 flathead machine screws. And I'll back up just a little bit. When you get this, you're going to get an instruction sheet, and it's going to tell you exactly what I'm showing you how to do. And on the top, I'll write the bag number of the hardware that coincides with that part. And as you see, here's the bag number 3, and that's what's written on top of my instructions. And I just laid out all the bolts. I just went ahead and opened it and laid out all the bolts. So now I'm going to go ahead and put this side together. This one just goes together. It's the easiest one to do. It just goes in and it's just tightened. And again, all of this stuff should be put together with some sort of an inhibitor, especially if you're going to run in salt water. Because if for any reason you ever want to take this apart and you don't use inhibitor and you've been in the salt water, it isn't coming apart. So now we're going to put these in, and what I do when I do these is I'll run these all the way down tight, and then I'll take and I'll just back them up a little bit. And I don't put, you can put lock washers on this side. They kind of squeeze out and they don't really work all that great. So you've got an option to either use the inhibitor on these 3, or you could use Loctite if you feel that's you want to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and run them all the way down to start with, just to speed up the video, and then I'm just going to back them up, because we want that bar to be able to be adjusted. So we can't just crank this down and then we won't be able to adjust our bars when it comes time to do that. So there we go. So now that's loose on the bottom, but it's kind of snugged up enough so that it's not going to move too much. Now our next thing is, I like to put these 1.5" panhead bolts and put a jam nut on first onto the machine screw here, and run those down quite a ways. And then you'll notice that these blocks have 2 tapped holes here and 1 tapped hole here. You're going to run this into the single tapped hole. It doesn't matter which side, because it's ambidextrous as far as the way it's made. So there, and I don't want to run it through too far, because it'll change my adjustment, and I want to be able to run that up in a minute and not spend twice as much time doing it. So we're going to put another one of those 7/8 flathead machine screws in there, just like this. And I'm not bothering torquing all this stuff down for this demonstration. It's really just a demonstration to show you where all the parts go. The adjustment is up to the installer. So let me just go ahead and put this other one together as quick as I can. Now, I wouldn't necessarily use a rattle gun on them, but I'm trying to make this video as short as possible. That's a little too much. Not right there. And I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to line up those holes. Washer, washer. And if you watch the video on the anchor locker, it's the same thing. We're just doing the same thing over again. The only thing different is the bracket's a different shape and it doesn't have a clam cleat on it because it's not necessary. So now we're going to turn it over and we're going to take the 2 aluminum spacers that were in the bag and we're going to put those on these 2 front holes here. And they're just used as stops. Okay, so that sits in there like that. Now, on this part, you'll have your choice. It depends on which way you have your trolling motor. If you use my offset trolling motor bracket, it may be more handy for this part, which goes underneath, but I got it on top to show it to you. It can be done either way. It can be done over here or it can be done over there. On this one, we also do the adjustment bolts on there because it's part of our adjustable system. I'm going to run those on and just run those through here. Okay, leave it. Don't run a whole bunch through until that way you don't have to back it out to get it to adjust. And it doesn't matter which side you run these through because it's the same either way. So just have, as long as they're both facing the same direction. So on this one, I'm going to go ahead and just put the bolt through from that side. And I always put the bolt through from the underside up, like this. And then the nut, which I'm not going to tighten, I'm just going to put it on here hand tight for demonstration purposes. I would run that down until it was just tight enough that I could still swing this. And that would be my adjustment on that. Then this part will go in here. We're not going to put it on just yet because I need to put my base mount in there. So we're going to swing that out of the way and we're going to set this up and adjust the base mount. So our base mount, like I said in video 1, is the first thing we put together because we're going to use it to adjust everything. And we want both brackets to be adjusted the same. So I'm going to slide that in. And if you'll notice, this is tapered, so it's not, these are not parallel to one another. They are purposely tapered into a point, and so is this. So that as it goes through and it makes up, it is a interference fit. It's not just a slip fit. So it's not going to be loose and rattling around. That's part of our adjustment. So I'm going to go ahead and put this on. Right here is the one screw that takes the whole thing apart with no tools when it's all assembled. So now we're sitting like this, and what I want to do is, you'll see how this is loose in here right now. We want to make that not be loose. So we're going to take and tighten this up. I want this bracket here to be all the way down against my stops, and I'm going to do the same thing over here. Now those pockets I showed you earlier, those pockets are there so that these adjustment screws land in those pockets, so they're not just hitting on an angle, they're hitting on a flat surface. So what we want to do is we want to not make that overly tight, but we want to just run that down. I usually finger tighten and then tighten those with a wrench. So I just tighten it like that, tighten that with a wrench. Same thing back here. We want these to go all the way up until they touch those rails right there, and that's the adjustment. Tighten that down. And like I said before, if when you mount this doesn't slide in and out, you're going to have to redo your adjustments, because if this base plate, when it's bolted to the boat, gets flexed, it can change this adjustment. So right there would be my adjustment. I'd lock all these nuts down right now, okay? And then at this point in time, those 3 bolts that I left loose, which I forgot to say in the first video, those need to be torqued down at this time. So then I would come back and I would torque those. And that's why you want them fairly close, because it can change your adjustment if you don't. So that's adjusted. That's what it looks like when it's adjusted. Now, when this is mounted to the boat, the only thing you have to do to remove this would be to loosen this up. Of course, the base mount would be mounted, and you would swing this away, and it would slide out, okay, just like that. So a good idea is to take on these mating pieces and put a little white lithium grease along here so that it slides in and out. And you may need to periodically do that if you're removing it, putting it back in quite a bit. So that's all it takes to put it on and off of the boat. Again, it's tapered, so it comes on down in here, and it should be slight interference fit. It doesn't just come out easy. You kind of got to give it a little shove, and that's the proper adjustment to it. If this is loose in here and you can rattle this back and forth, you need to readjust it. Okay, so that's that part. Now, this base mount for the trolling motor is drilled and tapped already to accept your trolling motor. So if you want to just have this mounted at the front of the boat and you want your trolling motor to fold straight back, you wouldn't use the offset plate. You'd do it just like this. The 6 bolts, washers, everything for mounting are right here, okay? Now, that's the end of this video. Again, it's pretty straightforward. The adjustment process is the same with your anchor locker. And the next video I'm going to do is going to cover the offset plate. So if you want your trolling motor to set along the bow and not just straight back in the front, like on a windshield boat, you wouldn't be able to open the windshield, then you're going to need this part, and I'm going to show you in just a second on how to put that on. Stop.